a global citizen in many ways. I think he has very different perspectives. And personally, I think he's extremely logical, he's rational, he thinks through things very thoroughly. You know, and he looks at all sides, really, before he makes a decision. So personally, that's why I really want to see him win the primary Tuesday and go to the general election, get the Democratic nomination.
Here it is. You have Barack Obama, who's got some glide to his stride. He's smooth, and yet he has appeal to hip-hop monsters in the streets, you know, who are wearing their pants down all the way to their knees, who are thugging up people, and he's like considered cool with a capital C. And then you have some white yuppies who are like really rolling in the dough, but happen to be a little liberal and progressive, who say, hey, this is a black candidate I can support, because he's not totally black, his mom is white, his dad, you know, is from Kenya, so he's OA, original African. And more importantly, is that Barack Obama is not like Jesse Jackson was or Al Slim Shady Sharpton. He doesn't have that sort of street hustle side to him. It seems like he could float and move in all circles. So he's engaged them. But you would think he would engage more the guy who's working a 9-to-5 job, you know, the blue-collar worker. No, that's Hillary's battle, Rick. Who could have figured that out? That she's the queen of the blue-collar working men and women on the assembly lines? So it was really young people versus old people, a generational divide. And it was really white women on one side against people of color on the other side.
Nice turnout. Yes. Isn't it wonderful? Yes. Hillary is a well-educated individual. She happens to be a woman. She knows politics. She'll be more than qualified to run this country. She cares about the people, the working people. She cares about the children, health care insurance, taxes like the rest of them. But she will be more involved, I'm sorry to say, but just being a woman.
She's rolling in Walmart dollars. I mean, she is the queen of Walmart. Used to sit on their board. It's exactly as Barack Obama said she was. And then, more importantly is, she's part of the old establishment Democrats, and yet there are old establishment Democrats who are jumping ship on the Clintons, who have decided to give up on that monarchy, and all of a sudden sign on to the new Camelot, and that's Barack Obama. Mr. McCain is playing both sides. He's going to move far right as the campaign gets further towards the nomination to try to make friends and influence people that he's burned the bridge with. I think the way John McCain wins the presidency of the United States is an appeal to the largest number of growing voters in America, the independents. Remember, only 35% of the voters are Republican, 35% are Democrat. The rest are up for grabs. They're free agents. It's those voters who will ultimately determine who the next president of the United States is. And I feel at this point, without Bloomberg as a third-party independent candidate jumping in with billions of dollars, most of those would go to McCain. Unless Barack is the candidate, then they might just split down the middle. It may be a shoo-in for McCain now for the nomination, but it's civil war amongst Republicans. There is the great divide. You think it was bad when it was blue coats versus gray coats? You think it was bad when it was Protestants versus Catholics? You have the McCainites, who are considered sort of pragmatic, you know, liberal, progressive on some issues, very conservative, very orthodox on other issues, against the hardcore Republican, right-wing, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, corn-fed Bible belters, who some have veered off towards Huckleberry, a.k.a. Huckabee. I can't quite figure that one out. He's sort of like a liberational theologist. He might as well be following Fidel Castro in some instances. And then the perfect candidate. I mean, he's pretty, he's got money. Mitt Romney, his only problem is he believes in the Book of Mormon, and the Holy Rollers, evangelicals and charismatics, they don't trust Mormons. So he can't get their vote. So Huckabee gets their vote, McCain gets the traditional vote, and Mitt Romney is on the outside looking in.
Welcome to Democratic Future of the 21st Century, the New York Young Republicans, Citizen Joe, Primary Night 2008. Thank you so much to everyone for coming. No matter what your party affiliation, no matter where you're coming from, we exist as our groups because we enjoy politics and we love having fun doing that.
Barack is claiming that that's it. No more whining, dining, and pocket lining on behalf of lobbyists who are just former elected officials who wait a few months and then start putting their beak in the troughs and siphoning off the public funds. Well, Barack's going to do the same thing because he's surrounded by Gorites. That's his management team. So although there'll be the prose, there'll be the rhetoric, he is going to be dependent on the lobbyists. This being the super capitalist state, the United States, everything's tied into the dough because the very people who manage the campaigns make incredible amounts of money when it's TV time, when it's radio ad time, when it's newspaper and magazine ad time, or billboard time, so that they're constantly promoting the fact that you need to keep raising more and more dough in addition to doing your retail politics. But it's all about pressing the flesh and finding people who are going to be willing to bundle for you. Now, this is very important because it's not just your $4,000 odd. I want your brother's money, your sister's money, your children's money, your grandchildren's money, your first wife's money, your second wife's money, your third wife's money. Oh, this is like the beauty contest that never stops. There's a pre-beauty contest, and now we have the Miss World contest because obviously if you're king of America, if you're president of America, you're king of the world. So now it's going to go on and on and on and on and on, and people are going to be making money hand over fist, and they're going to claim, well, that's the democratic process in action, that's retail politics. What we're going to get now is TV photogenic politics, the sound bites, the advertising ad nauseum.
We're not going to find out who's going to win tonight because they got to make sure there's more TV for more ads. You know how it is.
A truncated edition of the primary process should take place, but then again, it's such an extraordinary soap opera that TV gets ratings, that there's a lot of money to be made, and it's almost like you become a rock star when you run for president. You have New Yorkers who are fritzy and ditzy, who are on the extreme ends, who are like constantly like pumped with adrenaline. And because you see both Barack Obama and Hillary Rodham Clinton, I mean, literally running across the country like thoroughbreds, they really do represent the average New Yorker who is all over the place on a wide variety of subjects. And that's why I think the energy of Barack and Hillary matches the passion and the sort of 24/7, 365, ever-ready battery energy of New Yorkers.
You know, this is 30 years since I started the Guardian Angels on February of 1979 when I was a night manager of Mickey D's of McDonald's in the Bronx. And yet, 30 years later, some of the same circumstances that had taken place in 1979 are now taking place in 2008. A downturn of the economy, people suddenly thrown out of work, an increase in crime. The only difference is that the mayor and the police commissioner have focused on keeping crime down to where it is. We're using every available resource to do that. Back in 1979, cops were being laid off. They were inefficient. Corruption was rampant in this city. The quality of life has returned to the streets. It is now one of the safest big cities in the world. Back in the late 70s, it was one of the unsafest cities. Between the young thugs on the corners who ruled and members of organized crime like the Gottis and the Gambinos and the Genovese and Bananos, Lucchese, Columbos, who are out of control. I call them the geriatric espresso-sipping psychotic killers of organized crime. The police were inept, and it was all about crime. When the sun went down, the police were nowhere to be found in the city of New York in the late 70s. The Guardian Angels, from having started patrolling the subways and streets of New York, are now in 12 countries and 140 cities. Third world countries like the Philippines, Peru, Brazil, Mexico, South Africa, and many first world countries. And wherever the need is, whether it's a bucolic little town of 2,000 with no police, or Mexico City with 20 million people and out of control corrupt police and out of control crime in the streets, if people are willing to get involved and train as Guardian Angels and become Guardian Angels, we help them to do that.
a great moment for democracy all over the world, because now, even in places where people thought, no, a guy like Barack Obama, they'll never let be president of the United States. They'll use every trick in the book, tricknology, or they'll assassinate him, execute him, because that was in many people's minds, proved that that, in fact, is not the case. We have evolved here in America. People don't realize that. This hip-hop generation, this generation brought up on MTV, this generation that talks about gays, lesbians, transgenders, transformers, transvestites, I don't know, there's so many different terms now. It's a whole different generation. They are multicultural, they are diverse, and they were the ones who surged forward, and they didn't look at the color of his skin. They liked what he had to say. Barack Obama, as a normal, walking, talking, breathing human being in the United States, is more normal than most of the presidents we've had, because obviously he's busted his shoes. He's been a street worker, community organizer, which none of the others were, the sons of privilege with silver spoons in their mouth. The Barack Obama we got is the Barack Obama that has functioned as a senator and a state legislator, not the one who has the pearls dripping from his lips. He'll be a great motivator. He'll be a great representative of America around the world. But in terms of what he actually does, I think a lot of the Obama supporters are going to be hopelessly disappointed that this was not the guy who was going to return them to the promised land of the left. And quite frankly, he's already campaigning for another 4 years, and the media is not going to rough him up. So if the media doesn't rough him up, we're going to be living with Barack Obama for the next 8 years. You could see the blue tsunami was sweeping across the nation. And no matter what fact would come across, it was clear that America was rejecting Bush and Cheney. Nothing to do, as many of the pundits would say, with McCain and Palin. It had all to do with America was saying, oofa, Bush, oofa, Cheney. In fact, if America could have taken their shoes off that day and thrown it at both of them, they would have.
Measure the strength of our economy not by the number of billionaires we have or the profits of the Fortune 500, but by whether someone with a good idea can take a risk and start a new business.
Well, New York has always been the Sodom and Gomorrah playground for the crooks on Wall Street, who basically say, we have these derivatives that we can't explain. And, you know, there are all these fancy, dancy $5 words to describe massive rip-off schemes. And everything's come home to roost. Everybody benefited from this, from the poor schlub who had a house, who said, I couldn't even pay my rent. Now I have a $250,000 mansion, a palace. People with no job, no income. All they were able to do was breathe and show a pulse, and we were giving them loans we knew they can never pay back. So the fat cat Republican bankers made money, and a lot of the mid-level Democrats who were selling the mortgages made money. So since everyone was making money, nobody cared. Oh, the role of government, whether at the bottom shelf or the top shelf, was the same. Let the good times roll because we're collecting the moolah shmoolah, the money and taxes. Forget a rainy day fund. Everything will be glorious. Glory, hallelujah, hallelujah. The Republicans took credit. The Democrats took credit. Meantime, they were stuffing the money in their pockets. And then all of a sudden, reality hit. And now everybody is scrambling, pointing fingers. And New York is going to suffer incredibly because so much of the money that comes in to support the city of New York and the state of New York comes directly from the crooks on Wall Street. Since 1999, there have always been the rumors, the innuendos, the letters, the warnings about Bernie Madoff, that he would be making off with billions of dollars. There were people down on Wall Street, competitors of his, who were blowing the whistle on him, ratting him out, saying it is impossible he's delivering these dividends. Bernie made you money. And he would tell you, don't ask, and I ain't going to tell you. I mean, that's how mobsters who choke on their lobsters do business. They try to remember all the numbers. They don't write anything down on paper. He's a mobster. He's a criminal. And yet, he was treated, five-star treatment, top-shelf guy. He was the talk of the town.
So if you were a trendoid from Hollywood, a jet setter, a freakazoid, like Katzenberg or Spielberg, you were happy because you were making moolah shmoolah, but you couldn't be any more liberal or progressive. And if you were a rock-ribbed, all-American fundamentalist, holy roller conservative eating red meat in Mississippi, you loved it too because you were making 10 to 12% regardless. So everybody loved Bernie, and he would dole out money to Republicans and Democrats. That's right, wine, dine, and pocket line them all so that they wouldn't respond to inquiries. A letter would arrive at their office and would end up in the round filing cabinet, which is the wastebasket. And then all of a sudden, when people started calling him up and saying, Bernie, I need my money because all of a sudden my investments have gone south, there was no money to deliver. And that's when he had to reveal to everyone that he had ripped them off for $50 billion, and I'm telling you, it's $20 billion more, because there's all that unaccounted income that the IRS was never told about. People would invest in Bernie the way they would invest in the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, Panama, or in the safety deposit box in their local bank.